Hi folks, so we are back for our second lesson on evidence gathering and getting really strong evidence. So the last thing we did was talking about getting evidence in general and organizing it into main ideas and supporting details. Now we're going to really start looking at those supporting details and start figuring out what is important versus what is just interesting. Because for information to really be considered a key detail, it has to be a detail that connects the main idea. It basically needs to connect to the main idea that the author is presenting. In most nonfiction texts, though, the author is going to fill the pages with information that is important, or those key details, and also information that is meant to wow or amaze, gross out, or otherwise keep the reader reading. It's all great information because it does keep us reading and it keeps us engaged with the text and the main ideas. However, whenever we go to actually summarize a text or find that useful information and evidence that we need to sort through all of the information and just present what's most connected to that main idea. For example, if I'm reading a text and I'm reading a section that's called Harsh or Heroic in a book that's all about the Middle Ages, which I do like, and I read this line: Joan of Arc was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake. I might think, whoa, I really can't believe that. Things were crazy back then. And to be perfectly honest, Joan of Arc was a real historical figure that was really burned at the stake. So it's kind of like, this thing really happened? And clearly I'm interested in this fact. However, I also have to decide if this detail is actually important. So I have to check to see if it connects to the main idea that's happening in the text I'm reading right now. When I go back and look at the main idea, that box from the Box and Bullets, I'm noticing that it's talking more about the fact that although times of castles and knights seemed exciting, very few people actually had power and most people lived harsh lives. The fact about Joan of Arc having this harsh thing is certainly loosely related, but I don't think it connects the best to the main idea. I think there's other facts in that section that better connect to this main idea of, even though it was exciting, few people had power and many people had harsh lives. Instead of just talking about the one person, I'd be looking for details that were more about everybody. So I'd file away that Joan of Arc detail is interesting, but not really important to the main idea. Okay, so let's take a look at how identifying important versus interesting information can work on the deepfakes thing. So I literally went back to my boxes and bullets example that I gave you in the first lesson, and what I'm going to look at here is at my box, my main idea that I came up with and my details, and deciding which of these really connect to my main idea. For here, I'm seeing deepfakes are videos that aren't real. Now all these connect to that, but which things connect most is the fact that they are using artificial intelligence to alter faces and voices. I think that's pretty important. So I'm actually going to highlight this to make it stand out as important and something I need to pay attention to. I'm finding this important because it's telling me that they're not real and telling me kind of what they are and how this is done. Is it important to know it's increasingly popular? It is pretty interesting to me, but I don't think it really helps me understand and connect to this idea that they're not real. So I am going to do something that's called a strike through. So I'm going to go under Format, go under Text, and go Strike Through, which I have a Mac specific issue there, or key shortcut. Is it interesting where the name comes from? Yes. Is it important? No. So I'm going to do my little keyboard shortcut and do a strike through. And is it important or is interesting that takes thousands of videos? I'm kind of thinking this is interesting. I don't need to know that if I know this top detail. So I've highlighted what's important that I really want to pay attention to, so it kind of pops for me to see. And I did strike through on these so I can still see the detail, so I still know what I was thinking, but I'm not focused on those. And I'm going to do the same thing here to my next two big ideas. So now I just click down one, and the internet is full of deep fakes. All right, looking at all this, it's full of it. It's kind of interesting, or I'm sorry, it's important to know that you don't need to know how to do this. Others can create it for you. Nope, I want to do a highlight. That's why that looked funny. There we go. Is it important to know that it's more accessible for people? I think it goes here. And I think all these other things, yes, it's interesting to know these things, but it's not important to the main idea that it's full of deep fakes. The fact that it's more accessible could be very important. So not only is it that you don't need to know how, they're accessible both to make and to see. Those are both important things to know, of that they are full of deepfakes and why they're full of deepfakes. All right, last one. Deepfakes can be a problem. I have a lot of information here, so I'm going to quickly go through and see, is there anything specific on this? The idea that this can become a weapon, this technology, is very important to the idea that this can be a problem, even though there's fun applications. Great detail that we wouldn't need to, it could be a problem for that you don't need to convince a lot of people is a very interesting thing, but not totally important here because we just know this general thing. It's interesting that it's not likely to have to be a problem, but it's not totally important. One of the big focuses of the idea was that this could be a political problem, so I'm going to highlight that as important. These two things can be kind of interesting. Is it really important that this can be done to anybody? Yes. Is it important that it could be damaging to people's reputations? You know what? That is more connected to the idea of this being a problem than the fact that it can be done to anybody. So this is interesting. It can be done to anybody, but I have three facts here that are really related to this being a problem. So now, I still see my details, but I can really focus on the actual important details that clearly link back to my main idea here. So I have my information and my evidence organized.